The ADHD Home Organization Method. From cluttered to clear. Declutter room by room, build doable routines, and stay organized without the shame. By Marlow Hayes. Introduction. Imagine you are a bird flying high above the city of London in the middle of the 1800s. From up here, the city looks like a work of art. You see the grand dome of St. Paul's Cathedral. You see thousands of horses pulling carriages through narrow streets. You see the River Thames, a silver ribbon winding through the heart of it all. It looks like a place of order and progress. But as you fly lower, the picture changes. You start to see the patterns of how people are living. The city is growing much faster than anyone expected. Thousands of new people arrive every week. They move into small apartments and busy houses. They go to work, they cook meals, and they try to keep their lives moving. But there is a problem that no one wants to talk about. For years, the people of London have been making delayed decisions. Every time they have waste or trash, they put it in a hole in the ground or dump it into the street. Eventually, most of it ends up in the River Thames. They know it's there. They can see the piles of gunk building up along the banks. But it's easier to look the other way. They tell themselves they will deal with it later. They tell themselves that if they just try a little harder to ignore it, maybe the river will wash it all away. In the summer of 1858, the bill finally came due. A massive heat wave hit the city. The sun beat down on the river until the water level dropped, exposing years and years of delayed decisions. The waste began to ferment. The smell was so strong it became a physical force. It wasn't just a bad odor. It was a thick, choking cloud that took over the city. This event became known as the Great Stink. The leaders of the country tried to ignore it. They sat in the Houses of Parliament, right next to the river, and soaked their curtains in lime juice to hide the smell. They tried to keep working. They tried to act like everything was normal, but they couldn't. The pile had become too big to ignore. The smell forced them out of the building. It brought the entire government to a halt. For decades, the people of London felt a deep sense of shame about their city. They felt like they were failing. They thought they just needed to be cleaner or better people. But the truth was different. They didn't have a character problem. They had a systems problem. The city was built for a much smaller population, and the old ways of handling waste just didn't work anymore. It took a man named Sir Joseph Bazalgette to realize this. He didn't tell people to just try harder to be clean. He didn't give them a lecture on how to be better citizens. Instead, he designed a massive, revolutionary system of underground sewers. He built a new way for the city to function that didn't rely on people making perfect choices every single day. He built a system that handled the reality of how people lived. Once the system was in place, the shame disappeared. The city became healthy again. The Great Stink was over, not because people changed who they were, but because the environment around them finally supported them. The invisible weight in your living room. If you are reading this, you might feel like you are living through your own personal Great Stink. You might look at your kitchen counters, or that chair in the corner of your bedroom, and feel a wave of heat in your chest. That heat is shame. Maybe you spent years making delayed decisions. You see a piece of mail and think, I'll deal with that later, so you set it on the table. You see a box from a delivery and think, I'll break that down tomorrow, so you slide it into the corner. Over time, these small moments turn into doom piles. These are the piles of things you don't know what to do with, so you just stop seeing them. This is what we call clutter blindness. Your brain is so overwhelmed by the sheer number of things it has to process that it simply switches off. The piles become part of the wallpaper. You walk past them every day, but you don't really see them until someone says they are coming over for a visit. Then, suddenly the smell of the clutter hits you all at once. You panic. You shove everything into a closet or a spare room. You panic clean for 6 hours, exhausted and angry at yourself, wondering why you can't just be normal. You've probably bought every planner on the market. You've watched the videos of people with perfectly labeled clear bins and color-coded closets. You've told yourself, starting Monday, I'm going to be a person who puts things away. And for 2 days, you are. But by Wednesday, the system breaks. By Friday, the piles are back. The world tells you that you are lazy. It tells you that if you just cared more, your house wouldn't look like this. You started to believe those voices. You think your inability to stay organized is a moral failing. You feel like a broken adult who just can't figure out the rules that everyone else seems to follow so easily. But I am here to tell you what Joseph Bazalgette told the people of London. You do not have a character problem. You have a systems problem. Your brain works differently. If you have ADHD or even just ADHD-like traits, your brain's project manager is often on a permanent vacation. This part of the brain is responsible for things like starting a task, remembering where you put your keys, and deciding what is important. When your project manager isn't working, traditional organization methods are like trying to run a computer program on a toaster. It's not that the program is bad, it's just that the hardware wasn't built for it. The promise of a functional home. This book is not about becoming a minimalist. It is not about having a home that looks like a museum where no one is allowed to touch anything. We aren't aiming for Pinterest perfect. We are aiming for functional peace. By the time you finish these chapters, you will stop being a victim of your clutter and start being a home curator. A curator is someone who looks at a collection and decides what belongs and how to display it so it can be used and enjoyed. You are going to learn how to build a home that works for your specific brain, not the brain of some person on the internet who doesn't struggle the way you do. Here is what's going to change. The shame will lift. You will learn that a pile of laundry is just a pile of laundry. It isn't a sign that you are a bad person. When you stop beating yourself up, you actually have more energy to get things done. Systems that stick. You won't find 20-step routines here. Instead, you'll learn low-friction methods. These are systems that take almost no energy to start and are easy to get back to, even if you fall off the wagon for a week. Decision fatigue will fade. One of the hardest parts of ADHD is making choices. We are going to set up your home so you don't have to think. Your house will tell you where things go. The reset capability. Life gets messy. That's a fact. You will learn how to reset a room in 10 minutes without spiraling into a total breakdown. The ADHD tax will go down. No more buying a third jar of cumin because you couldn't find the first two. No more late fees because the bill was buried under a pile of magazines. You're going to save money and time. This isn't just about cleaning your room, it's about changing your relationship with your space. It's about making your home a place where you can actually rest, rather than a place that feels like a giant to-do list staring you in the face. I know this works because I have been in the trenches. I have lived through the days where the mere thought of doing the dishes felt like trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. I have felt the burning embarrassment of a surprise guest knocking on the door. This method wasn't born in a laboratory. It was born from the messy, chaotic reality of living with a brain that refuses to follow the rules. Meeting Sarah. To see how this works in the real world, we are going to follow the story of Sarah Jenkins. Sarah is a 34-year-old freelance graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon. She is creative, funny, and incredibly good at her job. If you saw her portfolio, you would think she has her life completely together. But if you walked into her house, you would see a different story. Sarah lives with her partner, Mark, and a very high-energy dog named Buster. Mark tries to be helpful, but he doesn't understand why Sarah can zone out on a design project for 6 hours, but can't seem to remember to put her shoes in the closet. Sarah's biggest secret is the doom room. It's a guest bedroom that has become a graveyard for every decision she couldn't make over the last 3 years. There are boxes from her last move that she hasn't even opened. There are old craft supplies from a knitting phase that lasted exactly 2 weeks. There are tax documents, old clothes, and to-be-fixed items that have been broken since 2021. As we start our journey, Sarah is at a breaking point. She is sitting on the floor of the doom room, surrounded by stacks of paper. She was looking for one specific document she needs for a client, and in the process of searching, she knocked over a box of old college notebooks. Now, the room is even messier than when she started. She's sitting in the middle of the mess, crying. Buster is whining at the door because he wants to go for a walk, but Sarah feels paralyzed. She looks at the piles, and all she can think is, I am a fundamentally broken adult. If I just bought that one planner I saw online, maybe I would be normal. Why am I like this? Sarah believes that her mess is a reflection of her soul. She believes she is lazy. She believes she just needs to try harder. Throughout this book, we are going to watch Sarah realize that she doesn't need to be a different person. She just needs a different system. We are going to watch her transform the doom room into a creative studio. And more importantly, watch her transform her opinion of herself. The road ahead. We are going to tackle this challenge room by room, but we are also going to tackle it brain by brain. We will look at why we do what we do, using some famous figures from history to help us understand. We will look at Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate creative genius who struggled to finish almost everything he started. He will help us understand the executive function gap and why our brains love new ideas but hate old chores. We will follow Florence Nightingale, who didn't just save lives with medicine, but with visual management. She will show us how to make our homes unignorable in a way that actually helps us. We will learn from Benjamin Franklin, a man who was obsessed with order, but admitted it was his greatest struggle. He will teach us about the speckled axe and why being perfectly neat is a trap. In the first few chapters, we will dig into the why. We'll talk about the science of the ADHD brain. Not in a boring way, but in a way that makes you go, oh, so that's why I do that. We'll talk about why surfaces are so hard to keep clear and how to build the 3 pillars of a home that doesn't fall apart. Then, we will get into the how. We'll go into the kitchen, the bedroom, and yes, the doom room. We'll learn how to declutter without the emotional exhaustion. We'll talk about dopamine-based organizing, the secret to making a boring task feel like a game. We'll build an external brain using labels and clear bins so your environment does the thinking for you. Finally, we will talk about how to keep it going. We'll learn how to handle the days when your brain just says no, and how to forgive yourself when things get messy again, because they will get messy again. The goal isn't to stop the mess from happening, it's to make the cleanup so easy that it doesn't scare you anymore. You have spent enough of your life feeling ashamed of the place where you live. You have spent enough energy trying to fit your round peg brain into a square hole world. It is time to stop fighting your brain and start working with it. The smell of the old London River was a great reformer because it forced people to stop ignoring the problem and start building a better system. Let the frustration you feel right now be your reformer. Let it be the thing that pushes you to try something different. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are just a person who needs a better sewer system for your delayed decisions. Chapter 1: Mastering the Executive Function Gap. The humming starts long before you even pick up a sponge. It is a low, buzzing sound in the back of your mind that tells you everything is wrong. You look at the pile of mail on the counter, and instead of seeing envelopes, you see a mountain of tasks you haven't done. You look at the laundry basket, and it feels like a physical weight pressing against your chest. You want to move. You want to be the kind of person who just stands up and gets things done. But your legs feel like they are made of lead. You aren't tired exactly. You are stuck. This feeling isn't about being tired, and it certainly isn't about being lazy. It is the feeling of a brain that has too many browser tabs open at once, and the close tab button is broken. You know what you need to do. You might even have a list. But the bridge between knowing and doing has a giant gap in the middle. Most people tell you to just try harder or just do it, but they don't understand that for you, the bridge simply isn't there. The genius who couldn't finish. In the spring of 1481, a group of monks in Florence, Italy, had a very big job for a very famous man. They wanted a painting for their church. They went to a 30-year-old artist who was already known as a superstar. His name was Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo was brilliant. He didn't just paint faces, he studied how light hit skin. He didn't just draw trees, he studied how sap moved through branches. The monks offered him a lot of money to paint the Adoration of the Magi. It was supposed to be his masterpiece. Leonardo accepted the job with a burst of energy. He was excited. He was inspired. He was ready to show the world what he could do. He started by making sketches. He didn't make just 1 or 2, he made dozens. He became obsessed with the background of the painting. He wanted to show ruins of buildings and horses charging into battle. He spent weeks studying the math of how parallel lines meet in the distance. He filled his notebooks with ideas. He was hyper-focused, a state where the rest of the world disappears because one thing is so interesting. But then, the interest started to fade. The math of the background was done. The sketches were finished. Now came the part that required sitting still and doing the slow, repetitive work of layering paint onto wood. Suddenly, Leonardo's brain wasn't buzzing with excitement anymore. It was buzzing with new ideas. He started thinking about how birds fly. He started thinking about how to build better bridges. He started thinking about a job offer in a different city, Milan, where he could design weapons and musical instruments. The monks waited. They sent messages. They likely visited his studio and saw the giant wood panel sitting there. It wasn't empty, but it wasn't a painting yet. Of a painting. A yellowish-brown sketch where the figures looked like spirits. Leonardo had done all the hard thinking, but he couldn't bring himself to do the boring finishing. In 1482, he simply left. He moved to Milan and left the unfinished masterpiece behind. The monks eventually had to hire a different artist to start a brand new painting, because Leonardo's project manager had quit the job. History calls Leonardo a genius, but if you lived next door to him in 1481, you might have called him unreliable or scattered. You might have seen his studio filled with half-finished statues and machines that didn't work yet, and thought, why can't he just finish one thing? Leonardo didn't have a moral problem. He had a brain that moved faster than his hands. He had a brain that craved the new and struggled with the now. He was a master of starting, but he was a captive to the gap between an idea and a finished product. To understand why your kitchen table stays messy, or why you have 4 half-finished craft projects in your closet, you have to understand a set of skills called executive function. Think of your brain like a busy office. There are lots of workers doing different jobs. One worker handles your vision, another handles your muscles, another handles your memories. But every good office needs a project manager. This person sits in the front of your brain, right behind your forehead. In the world of science, we call this the prefrontal cortex. The project manager has 3 main jobs. Initiation. This is the go button. It's the ability to see a task and actually start doing it without waiting for an emergency. Planning and organization. This is the map. It's the ability to break a big job like clean the house into small steps like pick up the blue socks. Execution and focus. This is the finish line. It's the ability to stay on one task until it is done, even when something else looks more fun. In an ADHD brain, the project manager is often asleep at the desk. Or maybe he's a very nice person who just gets distracted by every bird that flies past the window. When you look at a messy room, your vision worker sees the mess clearly. Your memory worker remembers that you should have cleaned it yesterday. But when they turn to the project manager and say, "Okay, what do we do first?" the project manager just shrugs and says, "I don't know. Let's go look at Wikipedia for 3 hours." This is not a choice you are making. It is a neurological mismatch. You are trying to run a high-speed, creative brain on a system that doesn't have a reliable manager. The myth of the lazy label. We need to talk about the word lazy. It is a word that has probably been thrown at you like a stone for most of your life. Maybe your parents said it. Maybe a teacher said it. Maybe you say it to yourself every morning when you look in the mirror. But here is the truth. Lazy people do not feel bad about not doing work. A lazy person is someone who could do the work, but chooses to sit on the porch and drink lemonade because they simply don't care. They are relaxed. They are happy with their choice. If you are sitting on your couch, staring at a pile of dishes, feeling a knot of anxiety in your stomach, and calling yourself names because you aren't moving, you are not lazy. You are stuck. You are experiencing executive dysfunction. You want to do the thing. You might even be screaming at yourself internally to just get up, but the signal from your brain to your body is getting lost in the mail. We believe the myth of laziness because it's an easy explanation. It's much harder to explain that your brain's go button is physically harder to press than other people's. Society tells us that if we cared enough, we would be organized. But Leonardo da Vinci cared about his painting. He cared about his reputation. He just couldn't bridge the gap. Sarah and the Bernie realization. Sarah Jenkins sat on her rolling office chair, staring at her computer screen. As a freelance graphic designer, her job was to make things look beautiful and orderly, but her own office was a disaster. There were coffee mugs from 3 days ago. There were piles of paper that she called the important pile, though she couldn't remember what was in them. She had sat down at 9 a.m. with one goal: organize her digital files. She wanted to create folders for her clients so she could stop searching for final v2 JPEG every hour. By 11:30 a.m., she was deep into a search for the best eco-friendly wicker baskets for office storage. She had 14 tabs open. She had even added a $60 trash can to an online shopping cart because she thought a prettier trash can would make her more productive. She caught her reflection in the darkened computer screen and felt a wave of familiar shame. I am a 34-year-old woman, she thought. Why am I like this? Why am I so broken? She remembered a concept she had read about the project manager brain. She decided right then to give that part of her brain a name. She called him Bernie. Okay, Sarah said out loud to her empty room. Bernie is clearly overwhelmed today. He saw the big task of organized files and he got scared. He decided to go shopping instead, because shopping is easy and files are hard. Naming the struggle changed something for Sarah. It wasn't that Sarah was a failure. It was that Bernie didn't have the right tools to do his job. Bernie needed a map. He needed the task broken down into something so small it didn't scare him. She closed the tabs for the wicker baskets. She looked at her dog, Buster, who was napping on a pile of discarded sweaters. Bernie, she whispered, we aren't going to organize all the files. We are just going to create one folder for one client. Just one. She did it. It took 2 minutes. Bernie didn't run away. Sarah didn't feel like a broken adult for those 2 minutes. She felt like someone who finally understood how to handle a difficult employee. The wall of awful. Why does a simple task like hang up the coat feel as hard as climbing Mount Everest sometimes? A man named Dr. Ned Hallowell and another educator named Brendan Mahan talk about something called the wall of awful. Every time you fail at a task, you add a brick to a wall. Brick 1, the time you forgot to pay the electric bill and the lights went out. Brick 2, the time your mom sighed when she saw your bedroom. Brick 3, the time you lost your car keys and were late for a big meeting. Over time, these bricks build a giant wall in front of every task. When you look at a basket of laundry, you aren't just seeing clothes. You are seeing every time you failed at laundry in the past. You are seeing the shame, the guilt, and the lazy labels. Your brain sees that wall and senses danger. It thinks, if I try to do the laundry and I fail again, I'm going to feel terrible. Better to stay on the phone and look at Instagram, where it's safe. To get past the wall of awful, you can't just run at it. You'll just hit the bricks and get hurt. You have to understand that the wall is made of emotions, not just physical objects. Organizing your home isn't just about where the spoons go. It is about learning how to dismantle the wall, one brick of shame at a time. Convergent thinking. One reason your home gets cluttered is that your brain is a divergent thinking machine. Divergent thinking is like an explosion. You start with one idea, and it leads to 10 more. You see a vase, and you think, I should put flowers in that. Oh, I should grow my own flowers. I need to buy seeds. I should build a garden box. I wonder what kind of wood is best for garden boxes. I should watch a video on carpentry. This is why ADHD people are often artists, inventors, and entrepreneurs. Like Leonardo da Vinci, your brain is built to expand. The problem is that organization requires convergent thinking. This is like a funnel. It takes 10 things and narrows them down to one. It's the ability to say, out of all these ideas, I am only going to do this one thing, and I'm going to put everything else away. For a divergent brain, putting something away feels like killing an idea. If you put the garden seeds in a drawer, your brain thinks they have ceased to exist. We call this object permanence issues. If you can't see it, you don't know it. So you leave the seeds on the counter, and the vase, and the carpentry book. Soon, your surfaces are covered in visual bookmarks, reminders of all the things you want to do. To the outside world, it looks like clutter. To you, it's a physical map of your interests. The executive function battery. Every person starts the day with a certain amount of brain fuel for their project manager. Let's call it your executive function battery. Every time you have to make a decision, you use some of that battery. What should I wear? Uses 5%. What should I have for breakfast? Uses 5%. Where are my keys? Uses 10% because you panicked. For people without ADHD, their battery is large and charges quickly. For you, your battery might be smaller, and it leaks power. By the time you get home from work or finish a long day of parenting, your battery is at 2%. When you stand in your kitchen and see the mail, the dishes, and the trash, your brain realizes that deciding where the mail goes will cost 10% of your battery. But you only have 2% left. This is when the clutter blindness sets in. Your brain literally stops seeing the mess because it doesn't have the energy to process the decisions required to fix it. It's a survival mechanism. If your brain kept screaming about the mess when it had no power to fix it, you would have a total meltdown. So it just turns off the lights in that part of your mind. The external brain solution. If your internal project manager Bernie is struggling and your battery is low, the solution isn't to try harder. The solution is to build an external brain. An external brain is a system in your home that does the thinking for you. If you always lose your keys, the external brain is a giant neon-colored hook right next to the door that screams at you to hang them up. If you forget to do the laundry, the external brain is a clear bin where you can see the clothes piling up, rather than a wooden cabinet that hides the problem. If you can't decide where things go, the external brain is a set of labels that tell Bernie exactly where the batteries or light bulbs belong so he doesn't have to think. Leonardo da Vinci eventually realized he couldn't keep everything in his head. He started carrying notebooks everywhere. He wrote down every tiny thought, every observation, and every drawing. He didn't try to organize them at first, he just captured them. These notebooks, his codices, became his external brain. They allowed him to be scattered on the inside while staying brilliant on the outside. We are going to stop asking your tired, overwhelmed internal brain to do the heavy lifting. We're going to make the house do the work. The first pivot. You might be feeling a little overwhelmed right now. You might be thinking about your doom room, or that one drawer in the kitchen that hasn't been opened in 2 years. You might be hearing that buzzing sound again. I want you to try something called the 1% pivot. In navigation, if a ship changes its direction by just 1 degree, it doesn't look like much at first. But after 100 miles, that ship ends up in a completely different country. You don't need to clean the house today. You don't even need to clean a room. You just need to change your mind about why the mess is there. The mess is not there because you are a bad person. The mess is there because your project manager needs better tools. Today, the only task is to stop the name calling. Every time you want to say, "I'm so lazy," I want you to say, "My project manager is overwhelmed." It feels small. It feels like it doesn't count. But this is the first brick you pull out of the wall of awful. When you remove the shame, you make room for the solutions. The challenge. Think about the one spot in your home that makes you feel the most broken. Is it a pile of mail? A chair covered in clothes? A doom room that you keep locked when guests come over? Look at that spot right now. Or just picture it in your head. Instead of looking at the objects, I want you to look for the missing bridge. Is the trash can too far away? Is the shelf too high to reach easily? Is the bin opaque so you can't see what's inside? Is there no home for those items, so they just float from surface to surface? Your challenge is to ask yourself one question. If I weren't allowed to blame myself for this mess, what would I blame the room for? If you can answer that, you have already started the work that Leonardo, Florence Nightingale, and Benjamin Franklin had to do. You have stopped being the victim of your home and started being its designer. The buzzing in your head might not go away entirely, but we are about to turn down the volume. We are going to stop trying to fix your brain and start fixing the environment around it. You are not an unfinished masterpiece. You are a work in progress, and the sketches you've made so far are more valuable than you think. What name are you going to give your internal project manager? And more importantly, what is the first tiny 1% tool you are going to give them today? Chapter 2. Why does a clean surface feel impossible? The death rate at Scutari Hospital had plummeted from 42% to just 2%. The hallways, once slick with filth and crowded with dying men, were now bright, scrubbed, and quiet. Supplies arrived exactly when they were needed. Bandages were found in seconds. The lady with the lamp moved through the wards at night, but during the day, she was something else entirely, a master of logistics and environmental design. Florence Nightingale had turned a house of chaos into a machine for healing. But when she first arrived in the Ottoman Empire in 1854, the scene was a nightmare. Florence stepped into a world of delayed decisions. Boxes of medical supplies were stacked to the ceiling in damp warehouses, but no one knew what was inside them. Food was rotting in one corner while soldiers starved in another. The problem wasn't a lack of items, it was that nothing was where it belonged and nothing was visible. The doctors and nurses were constantly emergency cleaning, moving one pile of trash to make room for a pile of bandages, only to realize the bandages were the wrong size. The hospital was one giant doom room. It was a place where things went to be forgotten. To the doctors, the mess was just part of war. To Florence, the mess was the enemy. She realized that if a person cannot see what they have, they might as well not have it at all. She didn't just want the hospital to be clean, she wanted it to be functional. She knew that the human brain, especially under the high stress of a war zone, could not be expected to remember where a specific bottle of medicine was hidden under a mountain of coats. She began by creating visual management. She didn't hide things in beautiful, opaque wooden chests. She organized the wards so that every supply had a logical, visible home. She changed the layout of the rooms so the flow of work was obvious. If a nurse needed to wash her hands, the basin was right there, unblocked by furniture. If a doctor needed a tool, it was on a shelf at eye level, not buried in a trunk. She externalized the organization. She made the building do the thinking, so the people inside could focus on saving lives. The fear of the hidden. We live in our own version of Scutari. The moment an object is tucked behind a cabinet door or placed in a dark bin, the mental thread connecting us to that object snaps. This is why we create doom piles. A pile on the kitchen counter is a visual bookmark. It is our brain's way of saying, "Don't forget this exists, it's important." We stack the mail, the school forms, and the half-finished craft project in plain sight, because the surface of the counter is the only place we trust. We are using our physical environment to hold our memories because our internal filing system feels like it has a hole in the bottom. The tragedy is that after a few days, clutter blindness sets in. The pile that was meant to be a reminder becomes part of the landscape. We stop seeing the individual items and start seeing a mountain of mess. Then the shame arrives. We look at the mountain and think, why can't I just be a person who has clear counters? We assume that normal people are just better at hiding their things. But for us, Hiding things is the first step toward losing them forever. The High Cost of the Hidden. Sarah Jenkins.